My sister wrecked my brand new car, then had the nerve to smirk and say, "Mom and Dad will make you forgive me." And believe it or not, they actually tried until I pulled out the insurance report. That smirk vanished real fast, because she had no clue what I'd been doing behind the scenes. I'd spent years scraping together every spare dollar, skipping out on vacations, resisting the urge to splurge, and driving my old clunker into the ground. All just to finally buy the one thing I'd always dreamed of. A car of my own, brand new and fully paid for with my hard-earned money. The second I signed the paperwork and the dealer placed the keys in my hand, something shifted in me. I hadn't felt that kind of pride in a long, long time. I ran my fingers along the flawless, shining hood, took in the rich smell of fresh leather seats, and thought to myself, this is mine, every last inch of it. I hadn't even had the car for a full day when my younger sister Chloe decided my joy was hers to snatch. Chloe, the baby of the family, spoiled from day one, had never held a job, never owned up to her mistakes, and never suffered a single consequence that Mom and Dad couldn't wave away. She walked through life acting like other people's stuff automatically belonged to her, simply because that's how things had always worked out in her favor. When I pulled into our parents' driveway that evening to show off my new ride, Chloe was already there, leaning against the garage, looking smug like she always did. She barely glanced up from her phone as I parked. "Nice ride," she muttered, pushing off the wall and strolling over like she was inspecting something she already considered hers. "What's the mileage?" she asked, peering through the driver's side window. "Less than 100, I replied, doing my best to sound calm even though I could already feel my temper simmering. Chloe let out a low whistle and gave a nod of approval. Then, without saying a word, she reached for the door handle and pulled it open. "Let me take it for a spin," she said casually. I stepped in fast, pushing the door shut before she could climb in, shaking my head. "No chance. I just got it." "You're not driving it," I said firmly. Chloe rolled her eyes like I just told her she couldn't borrow a pen. "Oh, come on, Liam. Don't be such a control freak. It's just a car." "Exactly," I shot back. "It's just a car that I bought. With my own money. You don't get to just take it." But Chloe wasn't the type to take no for an answer. She gave a cocky little shrug, stepped back, and smiled. And something about the look on her face made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, like she was already cooking up a plan B. I should have trusted that gut feeling. Side note, hey folks, if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. Thanks for watching. Later that night, I set my keys down on the entryway table while I ran upstairs to grab something real quick. When I came back down, the keys were gone, and so was my car. My fists clenched as the realization hit me like a punch. "Chloe." I bolted outside, heart pounding, but by then, she was already gone, tires screeching off into the night. I yanked out my phone and called her, straight to voicemail. I tried again, and again, still nothing. 2 hours later, when my phone finally rang, it wasn't her number on the screen. It was an unknown caller. I answered anyway, bracing myself for bad news. "Mr. Bennett?" A deep, steady voice said. "This is Officer Mason Carter with the County Police Department. I'm calling in regard to a vehicle registered under your name." My stomach dropped like a stone. "What happened?" I asked. "There's been an accident." He paused. "The driver's okay, but the vehicle has taken on heavy damage." I gripped the phone tighter. "Who was driving?" There was a beat of hesitation. Then the officer answered, "A young woman. She identified herself as Chloe Bennett. I don't even remember getting in my car. 1 second, I was standing there in the entryway gripping my phone, and the next, I was pulling up to flashing lights and twisted metal, my pulse pounding in my ears. And there she was, Chloe, arms folded, standing next to what used to be my brand new car. Not a hint of regret on her face. The front end was mangled, the hood crushed in, and one headlight was completely destroyed. My dream car gone. And Chloe? She looked like she couldn't care less. I slammed the door of my beat-up old car harder than I meant to and stormed over, hands trembling. "What the hell did you do?" I demanded. She finally turned to face me. And then, God help me, she smirked. That sucks, she said with a shrug. Like she just knocked over a cup of coffee instead of totaling my car. But hey, don't lose your mind over it. Mom and Dad will make you forgive me. It hit me like a slap. Mom and Dad will make you forgive me. No apology. Not even a flicker of remorse. Just that smug, entitled certainty that she'd be off the hook because our parents would once again sweep it all under the rug. I took a slow breath, trying to keep from exploding. My hands balled into fists, heart hammering so loud it drowned everything else out. And right then and there, I felt something inside me snap. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this. Not this time. Have you ever had a sibling who thought they could get away with anything? Drop a comment below because I was officially done pretending it didn't matter. The next morning, I woke up with a splitting headache, my whole body still tense from the storm of anger the night before. I couldn't stop replaying the crash, her smirk, that hollow pit in my stomach every time I pictured my ruined car. My dream crushed by someone who had never earned a thing in her life. Someone who thought my outrage was just some annoying background noise. Even before I rolled out of bed, I knew what was coming. I knew my phone would be buzzing with calls from Mom and Dad, trying to talk things out, trying to smooth it all over like they always did. As if Chloe stealing and wrecking my car was just some harmless little oopsie I'd get over if I'd just be reasonable. And sure enough, when I checked my phone, there they were. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and a text from Chloe that was so unbelievably smug, I had to read it twice to even believe it was real. Stop being dramatic, E.T. It's just a car. Mom and Dad said we'll figure it out, so stop acting like your world just ended. That was the text. Not a hint of regret. No apology. Not even a flicker of guilt. Just pure entitlement bleeding through every word, as if the real issue wasn't that she'd stolen and totaled something that belonged to me, but that I had the nerve to be upset about it. I swallowed my frustration, forcing myself to breathe slow and deep. Getting worked up over a text message wouldn't do me any good now. The truth is, Chloe had always been like this, and I knew exactly who had taught her to be that way. I gripped the wheel of my rusty backup car so hard my knuckles went pale, my gut twisting with anger and pure exhaustion, already predicting exactly how this next conversation with my parents would go. I didn't bother knocking when I got there. I just walked straight in. They were waiting at the kitchen table, both of them sitting stiff and tense like they were holding back from scolding me. Their faces wore this exhausting blend of fake concern and subtle annoyance, like I was the one causing trouble, like it was my reaction that needed correcting, not Chloe's actions. And there she was. Chloe, slouched in a chair, casually scrolling through her phone like she couldn't be bothered, like she was just killing time until the mess she made magically blew over, while I was the one stuck cleaning it all up. Mom exhaled loudly, setting her coffee down with a groan, rubbing her temples like I had shown up just to ruin her morning. Liam, sweetheart, we need to talk. This anger you're holding onto, it's not healthy. Something inside me went still. Cold. Controlled. But dangerous. It was a quiet kind of fury, the kind that had been smoldering under the surface for years of swallowing my pain, of letting things slide. But not anymore. My anger. I repeated, voice flat and disturbingly calm, my hands gripping the back of a kitchen chair so hard it felt like my fingers might splinter the wood. You think my anger is the issue here? Mom sighed again and looked over at Dad. They shared a glance that told me everything I needed to know. They'd already made their decision long before I walked through that door. Honey, she said with that sugar-coated tone she always used when she was about to gaslight me, it's just a car. Chloe didn't crash it on purpose. We don't think it's fair to come down on her so hard over what was clearly an accident. And that was it. That was the moment something snapped inside me. Something that had barely been hanging on, held together by duct tape and decades of forced patience. It ripped. She stole it, I said flatly, keeping my voice emotionless, because if I let myself feel anything right then, I'd explode. I told her she couldn't take it. She waited until I wasn't looking, took the keys, and drove off anyway. She stole my car. Crashed it. And then had the audacity to smirk in my face because she knew you'd protect her, like you always do. Chloe finally looked up, letting out a long, theatrical sigh. She rolled her eyes so hard it was like watching a teenager caught breaking curfew. Jesus, bro, you're acting like I killed someone, she muttered. I made a mistake, okay? Chill out. Dad reached over and gently placed a hand on mine, his expression soft, calculated. The kind of fake tenderness that looks like love if you don't look too close. Liam, he said quietly, tilting his head like he was scolding a kid who didn't know better. You're her brother. I know you're upset, but family forgives. That's what we do, we forgive? I just stared at him, stunned by the sheer nerve of it all. That he could sit there and push the blame back on me like I was being unreasonable. Like my hard-earned car didn't matter. Like my emotions were some wild inconvenience they had to manage. And it hit me, this had been my whole life. I'd been trained to believe I had to accept this. That keeping the peace was more important than acknowledging my pain. That forgiveness was expected on demand, no matter how deeply I'd been hurt. But that version of me was gone. I smiled. Not a big grin. Just a small, subtle curve of the lips. But it was enough. Enough to make Dad blink. Enough to make Chloe look up, suddenly wary. You know what? I said casually, my voice light, almost cheerful. You're absolutely right, Dad. Family forgives. I saw them relax instantly. Saw the tension drain from their shoulders as Chloe's cocky smirk returned. They thought they'd won. Thought they'd pushed me right back into the little box I'd lived in for years. They had no idea what was really happening. Because while they were celebrating their supposed victory, I was already setting my plan in motion. I wasn't just going to let this slide. Not this time. Chloe was going to learn what consequences actually felt like. I'd been spoon-fed the same line my whole life, family above all, forgive and forget, don't hold grudges. But as I sat alone in my car outside the insurance office, my hands gripping the wheel so hard my fingers went numb, I realized something. Those rules? They only ever applied to me. Chloe had never been asked to forgive, never been told to sacrifice, never had to clean up her own mess. She got to coast while the rest of us covered for her. But not anymore. And for the first time, I wasn't going to be the one left holding the broken pieces. I stepped into the insurance office, a blast of cold air hitting my face, a harsh contrast to the heat building in my chest. All I could think about was that smug look on Chloe's face when she said, "Mom and Dad will make you forgive me." The guy behind the desk barely looked up, fingers tapping at a keyboard. "How can I help you today?" he asked, his tone flat and businesslike. I took a long, deep breath, letting the fire settle into focus. This was it. "I'm here to file a claim on my car," I said evenly, keeping my voice calm and steady. No emotion. Just business. He nodded, clicked a few things, then finally looked up at me. "Was it an accident? Do you have a police report?" "Yes," I replied, my tone calm and firm, my heartbeat steady. My mind was made up and nothing was going to shake it. "I also need to report it as unauthorized use." That made him stop. He blinked once, his head tilting a little like he wasn't sure if he'd heard me right. "Unauthorized use?" he echoed, a hint of surprise creeping into his voice. "Are you saying your vehicle was stolen?" I could have just said yes. But I knew better than to stretch the truth when the facts were already powerful enough to speak for themselves. "I never gave her permission to drive it," I said clearly, choosing each word with care, making sure there wasn't a single crack in my story. "In fact, I specifically told her not to. She took it anyway. That qualifies as theft, doesn't it?" The man paused, thinking it over, then gave a small nod as he typed something into his system, eyes flicking to the screen like he was double-checking internal protocol. "If you can provide evidence that you denied her permission and she took the car anyway," he said, "then yes. That would be considered unauthorized use." Without hesitation, I pulled out my phone, my fingers quickly navigating to the messages, screenshots of my exact words, telling Chloe no, telling her she couldn't drive it. And right after that? Her smug responses, brushing off my refusal like it was some kind of joke. I held the screen up so he could see it. He leaned in slightly, reading through the exchange. His eyebrows lifted a little before he nodded again. "This should be more than enough," he said professionally, his hands moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "Since you're filing it as unauthorized use, you won't be held liable for the damages." He glanced at me once more, calm and matter-of-fact. "The responsibility will fall on the driver." Chloe was about to be held responsible for something. It took a second for that to really sink in. The idea settled into my chest slowly, like syrup spreading over coals. Warm, heavy, and deeply satisfying. After a lifetime of slipping through the cracks, of dodging any and all consequences, Chloe was finally going to be forced to deal with the fallout of her own choices. The same sister who'd smirked and told me I'd have to forgive her because our parents would make it happen? Yeah, she was in for a surprise. "How much are we talking about?" I asked, my voice even, though I could feel my heart thudding in my chest with this strange, unfamiliar sense of justice. The man checked the screen, adjusted his glasses, then gave me the number. "Given the extent of the damage, we're looking at somewhere in the $35,000 to $45,000 range. 30 to 40 grand. I let out a slow breath, letting that figure wash over me. It hit like a cold wave, then warmed into a wave of vindication. Chloe had never faced anything even close to this kind of accountability, not once. But now? The full weight of it was heading straight for her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to cushion the blow. I walked out of that office with my shoulders lighter. The sun felt warmer. The breeze tasted sharper. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt good. I felt in control. I felt free. That night, I was sprawled out on my couch, phone in hand, aimlessly scrolling through social media, just killing time when I came across a new post from Chloe. There she was, surrounded by friends at some bar, drink in hand, flashing a smile like she didn't have a care in the world. Her caption? Unbelievable. Tough day, but nothing a few drinks can't fix. Some people need to chill out and move on. Life's too short to stress over little things. Little things. She called it a little thing. A laugh slipped out of me before I even realized it. A sharp, almost shocked laugh, one that felt so strange I had to pause, letting the absurdity of it all roll through me. Chloe thought she had the upper hand, thought the storm had passed. She figured her parents had bailed her out again, that things had gone back to normal. She thought I'd swallowed my pride, buried my anger, and just accepted it like I always had. But Chloe didn't know what I'd set in motion. She had no idea what was heading her way. And by the time the claim finished processing, by the time the bill showed up with her name on it, she'd be too late to do a damn thing about it. A few nights later, I found myself at the dinner table with the family. My father had gone all out. Table set like it was Thanksgiving, candles flickering, the smell of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes in the air. All of it staged to create this warm, cozy little illusion. Like we were just one big happy family having a heart-to-heart. It was all fake. This dinner wasn't about food. It was about control. A carefully orchestrated moment of reconciliation designed to smooth things over and push me back into line. My mother sat at the head of the table, quiet and composed, her expression unreadable, but I knew better. I knew exactly why we were here. And so did Chloe. She was seated across from me, that same smug smirk tugging at the corner of her lips, her phone next to her plate, already halfway checked out like she didn't even need to try. I could practically hear the rehearsed conversation ticking behind their eyes, the planned phrases, the guilt-laced reasoning, the lines about family and forgiveness they'd each take turns throwing at me. But I wasn't nervous. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't even angry. My hands were resting in my lap, and under the table, between my fingers, was a thick envelope. I held onto it lightly, not for security, but because I already knew how this dinner was going to end. Chloe spoke first, of course. Her voice soaked in sarcasm, her expression smug and unbothered. "So," she said, leaning back with her arms crossed, "have you finally calmed down? Or are you still throwing a tantrum over a stupid car?" Her words barely touched me. I'd expected every syllable. I already knew she'd twist this into some kind of joke, make it sound like I was the unreasonable one. Classic Chloe. I just tilted my head slightly and gave her a small, unreadable smile. One she couldn't quite place. And I watched her smirk grow wider, watched my parents exhale in unison like they thought we were finally getting somewhere. My dad let out a breathy sigh, the kind meant to feel gentle, wise, patient. Like he was stepping into the role of peacemaker. Like I was the one being difficult. "Liam, sweetheart," my father began, his voice soft and diplomatic like he was trying to talk a bomb out of going off. "I know this whole thing's been a lot on you. But we really need to move past it together as a family. Chloe made a mistake, sure, but hanging on to all this anger isn't going to solve anything." Mom, always the so-called reasonable one, nodded in agreement without even looking up from her plate. Calm, composed, and as always completely detached. "Life's too short to dwell on things like this," she said, slicing into her chicken with the elegance of someone who's used to pretending everything's fine. "At the end of the day, Liam, it's just a car. Material things can be replaced. A family." She finally glanced at me. "Family can't." And right then, I could feel it, that smug little glow coming off Chloe like heat from a fire. She was practically basking in it, feeding off their support, sitting there across from me like she'd already won. She picked up her fork and twirled it around between her fingers, shaking her head with a smirk that could curdle milk. "Seriously, E.T., she scoffed, "you need to relax. You've always been so intense, making everything a federal case." She let out this amused little laugh, like we were joking around. "It's a car. Not the end of your life. You'll bounce back." It was in that moment, right as she chuckled at her own nerve, right as my father reached over to place that patronizing, fatherly hand on mine, right as Mom gave her a subtle nod of encouragement, that I finally made my move. I reached under the table, grabbed the thick envelope I'd been holding onto all night, and set it down in front of Chloe with slow, deliberate purpose. The solid thud of paper against the polished wood was loud enough to pull every eye at the table toward it. Chloe barely glanced at it. She rolled her eyes with a little shake of her head, still convinced I was being dramatic. "What is this? Some whiny letter about how I hurt your feelings?" "Read it," I said flatly. No emotion. Just instruction. Something about the tone must have caught her off guard because for the first time all night, her smile slipped. Not much, just a flicker, but it was enough to let me know she felt it too. Her fingers hovered over the envelope for a beat, then she tore it open. As soon as her eyes hit the top of the page, the blood drained from her face. It was like watching a mask fall. Her hands clenched around the papers, her mouth open like she wanted to say something, but no sound came out. She slouched back slightly like someone had kicked the breath out of her. That smug, untouchable confidence? Gone. My dad frowned, clearly confused, still holding my hand like I was the one who needed comforting. Liam, what's going on? Chloe's voice was barely audible. What did you do? I took a slow sip of wine, savoring the silence, letting it hang long enough for the weight of it to sink in. Then I spoke. Calm. Controlled. Deadly clear. That, I said softly, is the finalized insurance paperwork. It officially places full liability for the damages on you. The mood in the room flipped instantly, like a fuse had been lit. You could almost feel the air get heavier. Mom finally looked up from her plate, frozen mid-bite, her eyes sharp and scanning the table like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Trying to figure out how the golden child just got handed a reality check. Dad yanked his hand away from mine, reaching for the documents with shaking fingers, flipping through them as the color drained from his face too. I watched the moment he saw the dollar amount, watched his breath hitch as the weight of it finally hit him. Chloe, for the first time in her life, looked genuinely scared. And I'll be honest, I had never, in all my years, felt more satisfied than I did in that moment. Her chair scraped hard against the floor as she shot to her feet, the legs screeching across the tiles, loud and angry. She stood there, her breathing sharp and ragged, the papers crumpling in her clenched fists. She stared at me like I'd stabbed her in the back, like I was the villain here. As if the betrayal wasn't in her stealing and destroying something that meant everything to me, but in my refusal to pretend it didn't matter. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke, low and furious, trembling with rage. This isn't funny, Liam. Tell me this is a joke. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her, letting the silence do the talking. I watched her glance toward our parents, silently begging them to jump in, to fix it, to do what they always did. My dad looked completely lost, mouth slightly open, hand gripping his shirt like his chest hurt. His eyes scanned the papers again, desperate for some kind of loophole. Mom, still trying to play it cool, pressed her palms to the table. Her voice stayed level, but I could hear the strain underneath. Liam, she said, her gaze cutting straight through me, this has gone far enough. You're punishing your sister in a way that's not just over the top, it's vindictive. Chloe let out a humorless laugh, bitter and panicked. She ran a hand through her hair and turned her back on the table, pacing the floor like a cornered animal. This is insane, she hissed. You're seriously trying to ruin my life over a freaking car? I leaned back, arms folded, face blank. My tone didn't waver. No, Chloe. I'm not ruining your life. I'm just finally refusing to clean up your mess. My dad let out a strangled breath, his hand flying to his chest like I'd hit him. He stared at me, stunned, like he truly couldn't comprehend that I wasn't playing the part anymore. The part I'd been assigned since we were kids. The fixer. The forgiver. The one who held everything together so she didn't have to. He shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. Son, this is going to follow her for years. This kind of claim, what it'll do to her record, her credit, her future. His fingers clenched around the paper as if he could somehow erase it, take it all back with sheer will. This isn't just some little punishment, my dad protested, voice tense with rising concern. This could wreck her credit, hurt her future. Hurt her ability to what, Dad? I cut in, sharper now, leaning into the edge of the table, my patience fraying fast. To keep floating through life untouched? To keep grabbing whatever she wants without thinking for a second about who she's hurting? To keep letting you and Mom protect her from the real world like it's your full-time job? Chloe smacked her palms against the back of her chair, her whole body taut like a wire stretched to its limit. You're acting like I murdered someone, she snapped, eyes blazing, her voice cracking from the pressure. Okay? I took your car. I wrecked it. I was a jerk about it. Fine. I get it. I messed up. She flung a hand toward the documents in my father's hands, face twisted with frustration. But you? You went out of your way to make this as awful as possible for me. Something snapped inside me at that. Something old. Something that had been building up for years, waiting for a moment like this to finally erupt. I stood up slowly, deliberately, meeting her stare head-on, my voice quiet but laced with ice. You didn't care when I lost something I worked my ass off for. So why should I care now that you're losing something? That hit her harder than I expected. For just a second, she looked stunned. Breathless. I saw a flicker of something like guilt in her eyes, but it vanished almost instantly, swallowed up by that same spoiled defiance that had been her armor since we were kids. Mom let out a heavy breath, rubbing her temples like this whole thing was just a headache she wanted gone. Liam, she said in that worn, disappointed tone, I know you're hurt, but this isn't right. We're family. We don't treat each other like this. I let out a bitter laugh, crossing my arms tightly. We don't do this to each other? Really? That's rich, Mom. Because Chloe had no problem doing it to me. And you? You were more than happy to let her. Chloe made a frustrated sound and dragged her hands through her hair like she was on the verge of tearing it out. I don't have that kind of money, she cried, her voice cracking under the weight of reality. How the hell am I supposed to pay this off? And for the first time all night I smiled. But there was nothing kind about it. Figure it out, I said calmly. Then I turned around and walked away, heading for the front door. I didn't look back. I didn't slow down. I didn't give her even the smallest glimpse of regret. I just kept moving. Behind me, I heard my dad's voice rise, panicked and pleading, begging me to reconsider. To be reasonable. To not let this destroy the family. But I didn't stop. Chloe had taken something from me. And for the first time in her life, she was finally going to give something back, whether she liked it or not. Days passed. No call. No message. Not even a half-hearted apology. And honestly, I didn't expect one. I knew exactly what she was doing. I could picture it perfectly, Chloe pacing around her too expensive apartment, pulling at her hair, blowing up Mom and Dad's phones, demanding they fix it like they always had. But this wasn't a scrape on the bumper or a bad grade on a test. This was 40 grand. And I knew my parents didn't have that kind of cash lying around, not without dipping into funds they'd always said were untouchable. Not without trading in comfort for consequences. And if there was one thing I knew about them, it was how much they hated discomfort. So when the knock finally came, loud, impatient, arrogant, I didn't even need to look through the peephole. That sense of entitlement practically oozed through the wood. I waited. Let her stew on the other side. Let the silence eat at her. Let her feel even an ounce of the frustration I'd lived with ever since she crashed that car. When I finally opened the door, she looked different. Her usually perfect hair was a mess. Dark circles ringed her eyes. Her body slouched like it was holding up too much weight. Her fingers twitched nervously at her sides. I leaned casually against the frame, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Something wrong, Chloe? Her jaw tensed, her eyes flaring with something desperate, something dangerous. You need to fix this, she said, her voice low and tight. I don't care what you want. I don't care what I have to do. Just undo it. Make it disappear. I let out a quiet breath through my nose and gave the slightest shake of my head. It's done, I said plainly. You'd need a lawyer and about 30 grand to fight it. And we both know you don't have either. For a split second, her face cracked. Just the tiniest fissure. That flawless confidence she wore like armor? I saw it split open, and underneath was raw panic. But just like that, she buried it. Swallowed it. Replaced it with anger, with spite. With the same bratty arrogance that had carried her through every other disaster she'd ever caused. She barked out a bitter laugh, dragging her hands through her hair again. Her breath ragged, her stance defensive. You really hate me this much? She shouted. You seriously think I deserve to have my whole life blown up over a car? I tilted my head slightly, studying her like she was some strange creature I didn't recognize. You destroyed something I worked my whole life for, I said quietly. And you didn't even blink. Why should I care that I'm wrecking your bank account? That's what I should have asked her. But I didn't have to, because the moment was speaking for itself. Chloe stood there, fists clenched at her sides, her shoulders shaking as the pressure built inside her. Her nostrils flared, her voice cracked, and the words tumbled out in ragged desperation. This isn't fair, Liam. You're punishing me for something that was never meant to go this far. Something that wasn't supposed to ruin me. I made a mistake, okay? A dumb mistake. But this, what you're doing now, is cruel, is calculated. It's insane. I felt my lips twitch just barely. Not a grin, not even quite a smirk. Just the quiet flicker of satisfaction that comes when justice, finally, starts to land where it's due. For the first time in her life, Chloe was brushing up against something she'd never met face to face. Consequences. You'll figure it out, I said lightly, shifting my weight, voice airy and casual like we were talking about dinner plans instead of a $40,000 life lesson. Isn't that what you always do? She didn't answer. Not a single word. For once, Chloe had nothing to say. I started to close the door. Slowly, deliberately. But before it could latch, her phone buzzed in her pocket. I saw her flinch. Something in her face changed. Her fingers scrambled to pull it out, fumbling like her hands had forgotten how to work. Her eyes scanned the screen, and whatever she saw there drained the last bit of color from her cheeks. She went still, then stiff, then silent. I leaned against the doorframe again, cool and casual, arms crossed, watching it all unfold with quiet interest. "What's wrong, Chloe?" I asked, voice syrupy sweet, my tone soaked in mock concern. "Bad news." She opened her mouth. No sound came out, just a sharp breath, jagged and shallow. The kind of breath you take when you feel the floor drop out from under you. I didn't need to ask. I already knew what she was reading. The message from her employer. The one informing her that her recent incident had raised red flags. That her behavior had caused concern. That the promotion she had been bragging about for weeks was being reviewed. That her perfect little image had cracked wide open. And now, for once, there were consequences that even Mom and Dad couldn't smooth over. Her golden girl immunity had expired, and she was finally alone with the fallout. I didn't wait for her to explain, didn't hang around to watch the excuses form on her tongue. I wasn't interested in the tears or the blame shifting or the desperate plea for one more undeserved lifeline. Instead, I smiled, not out of cruelty, out of clarity, a slow, deliberate, knowing smile. And then, without a word, I gently shut the door in her face.